August 10th, 2022. Well, obviously, we know what we got to talk about tonight, or the raid on Trump's house and at Mar-a-Lago. Uh, but I'm going to have a slightly different spin. I think you've already heard all the news. It's been all over the place for the last 2 days almost here. Um, and so I want to take a slightly different look into this thing and kind of the origins of it and what might really be going on here a little bit. Well, of course, this is outrageous. It's unprecedented, and it seems unnecessary if it's to do what it says it's to do. And people that it seems to be leaking out pretty much that the warrant was basically to search for some documents that are being disputed with the National Archives. And of course, this is not unprecedented with ex-presidents. Several of them have had these kind of disputes, and none of them have yet been raided yet. So, as always, former President Trump comes in for special treatment, doesn't he? Yeah, that's the way they operate. And but what I want to get into is what I think could be behind this a little bit. I mean, the timing is very suspicious, I think, because everybody immediately says, "Yeah, Biden did it," but then again, does Biden know what's even going on in his administration? Hardly, unless somebody tells him. And would he remember it very long? Well, anyway, let's don't go into that too much. But the point is that it doesn't seem logical from a certain point of view, given that this was his big week. I mean, he had his big bill, his big reconciliation bill, and his big tax bill, had squeaked through the Senate with a 50-50 vote, with Kamala Harris casting the deciding vote, and it's ready to go to the House on Friday to be approved, and the big success for him, right? So why in the middle of that would you do a raid on Trump's house and totally blow up the coverage? So everybody's talking about something else than your big success. So I tend to think it comes from a little bit lower echelon, not because I'm thinking they're ethical or independent or anything exactly. It's just I tend to think this is kind of a little bit of a Keystone Cops kind of a thing in a way. So what's behind it? Well, there's the assistant director in charge of the Washington field office of D.C. That is a Stephen DiTullio, I think how to pronounce it, Italian name DiTullio, I guess it is. And I think this, and it seems like the real impetus for this came out of D.C., not locally. Okay, so who is this guy and why is it significant? Well, he was the special agent in charge of Detroit at the time of the Governor Whitmer kidnapping scenario, if we recall, in which was basically a sting operation conducted by a bunch of not too competent individuals. I mean, one of them was basically homeless, claiming to have this great plan to kidnap the governor of Michigan and put her on trial. And eventually this went to trial, and I guess most of these people were acquitted, and the rest of them were hung juries. So I don't know what they're going to do as a follow-up, but it was a fiasco. But he was out of there in time to get his promotion to D.C. to have the big gig in the big town, right? At least in terms of power. So anyway, by the way, if you like these videos, please subscribe. Give me a like if you are subscribed. It helps out with the algorithm. And you can share these with people. The links can be shared, and comments are appreciated. So he's in D.C., and what happens next? Well, this is before the infamous January the 6th riot, right? And, well, okay, there's a lot of suspicious things about that riot. You have one person out there, yelling and screaming that people have got to go into the Capitol, and yet this individual was not arrested and not put on trial. For other people who simply walked in through an open door after all the bad stuff had pretty much happened, have been hunted down across the country and put on trial. So, and then we have the two bombing attempts, right? The two bombs that were placed, one before the Republican headquarters and one before the Democrat headquarters, neither of which went off. And the individual, although caught on camera, amazing with all the incredible capability that the FBI has, is yet to be identified and arrested. And then there's other evidence that there were perhaps other FBI assets, either informants or actual agents in the crowd that day. And what were they doing? And let's face it, if three well-known militia groups that are known to be somewhat on the radical side were all going to come to D.C. on the same day, and is there any likelihood that they don't have, if they don't have FBI assets inside those organizations informing on what they're up to? And yet it wasn't stopped. The National Guard was not called out. The police, Capitol Police, were not equipped with adequate riot gear, and they weren't adequate reinforcements. And while everybody's blaming Trump for what he didn't do, what about what Pelosi didn't do? You see, it looks to me like the whole January the 6th was kind of a setup, which our beloved Donald Trump did walk into. He's just a little bit of a bull in a china shop at times. And I've pointed out before the whole thing. Well, let's not go through it again. People have been following me know what I've said about that. But the problem is that this guy is in charge of all this FBI information, right? And lets it happen, apparently. And I'm thinking, could this be another one of his specials? So now, of course, we have the raid on Mar-a-Lago coming out of the Washington field office, led by, you can guess who. And so my thinking is that this guy is really the instigator of this whole thing. Now, I mean, sure, the archives is complaining, but they always do complain. But most of the time, nobody goes off and raids the former president's residence over it. They just kind of negotiate and maybe go to court or something, settle it out. And of course, it's always a question, I guess, what's an official record and what's a personal record? What really was classified and what had he declassified before he left? Because he did declassify a broad range of documents and some kind of memos he put out. And the president has the ultimate classification authority. So if he declassified it before he left office, then it's declassified. And so, at any rate, there's no violation in that case. If it was, well, that's a bit more ambiguous. But again, it's also unclear what degree did he personally select every document that was in those 15 boxes. I mean, did he go through them himself personally? Or did somebody put them in there? And what was their motivations? And what were they supposed to put in there? And what did they put in there? You see, there's a lot of ambiguity about this thing. But the point is, I think that we have to look at the leadership. And my view is that this Attorney General Garland and this FBI Director Wray are not strong leaders. I mean, they're almost functionaries in their jobs, in my opinion, more than anything else. In other words, I don't see them as grand conspirators. I think they have underlings who are conspirators, who put things on their desk for them to sign, and they sign it. Just like people in the White House put things on Biden's desk to sign, and they sign it. And so I think there's all sorts of radical people in the jobs right under these individuals who are causing a lot of trouble. And that's why I think really happened here, and why such a kind of not really the most fortunate thing for the Biden administration just happened. And what could turn into be a pretty fortunate thing for President Trump just happened. Because, I mean, I don't think there's any there, is my own opinion. I don't think this leads to any chargeable offense, at least a rationally chargeable offense under normal legal principles. And so I think that's what happened. And I think that's, and the other thing is that this guy, okay, I forget the guy's name. I meant to have that for you, and I knew there was something else I was searching for before this video. But anyhow, is a magistrate down in Florida who was involved in the whole Epstein deal back in, was it 2008 or something like that, where basically he left the prosecutor's office and joined up kind of with the defense team and seemed to help this guy negotiate a sweetheart deal. And the other thing about Epstein, which is sort of relevant, is what happened to all the information? I mean, he supposedly had all kinds of videotape of things that should be criminal, right? Involving high-level people and underage girls. And yet, none of this has surfaced. There's been no indictments based on it. All we went after was that one lady that was his fixer or whatever. And then he ends up somehow dead in jail, kind of inexplicably. and they're claiming it's suicide, but it seems very suspicious. So at any rate, this guy probably had nothing to do with that part of it at all. That's probably somebody else. Uh, we could guess who, but let's don't go on that. Let's cause it throwing more stones tonight, huh? And no, it's not the agent in charge. That's not that guy. It's kind of a higher level ex-political figures I'm thinking of. Might have been. Well, at any rate, so many highly powerful people could have been implicated in this thing. It could be a scandal of the ages, I suspect, but it's apparently been covered up effectively. So, at any rate, that's my theory on what happened. I think you've got a rogue assistant director in charge in the Washington office who's, I think, a Democrat. He originally hails from Rhode Island, and if he hailed from Rhode Island, involved in things he's involved in, he's probably a Democrat. And so my thinking is that that's what actually is going on here. And this whole search is really a fishing expedition. They spent hours in there looking at everything. And so my thinking is they were hoping to scoop up something that can be used for either a political purpose or potentially the basis of some kind of a charge. Or even people think that they could have been an effort to plant something there. And I would definitely I think if I was Trump, I would definitely have the thing swept very carefully for any kind of espionage devices. It could be bugged. Ain't the first time they were listening in on them, right? So anyhow, and this whole theory that's been thrown out that, well, they wouldn't have done this unless they had solid evidence. They've already done things against them without solid evidence and forged documents and put them before judges. So not this particular individual, of course, other individuals who are no longer employed. But it seems like this cabal in the FBI is fully capable of still doing things of this sort. So at any rate, that's kind of what I think about it. I think it gives you a little background, and I think a little bit of different slant than the mainstream discussion. And we'll just have to see where we go from here. The other thing is that there was a congressman here who was Scott Perry from, I think, Pennsylvania, who apparently was kind of an associate of Trump and apparently has had a conflict going on with this January 6th committee. And apparently out of the blue, they came up and with a subpoena and seized his cell phone. So, I mean, what's this all about? I mean, this is another example. I mean, that they're on a roll here, up to no good, probably trying to help the Democrats keep control of the Congress, too, by trying to implicate as many people in false charges as possible. At any rate, that's kind of what I have for today on this. And by the way, you can follow me on my social media accounts, which the addresses of which are listed in the description below. And until next time, we'll try to keep you informed.